I'm Jennifer Neville-Campsell.
And I'm Scott Campsell. Welcome to Uxbridge Beat. Today we're going to be talking about beer, specifically local beer from the Second Wedge Brewery.
We are happy to introduce you to our friends, the owners of the Second Wedge, Rob Gerard and Joanne Richter.
So here's our fun evening over pizza and, of course, beer.
Hold on.
I'm just putting it in the center.
I know exactly how I want to start this. This is exactly how I want to start this podcast. And I don't know if you can hear the beer pouring, but this is an Elgin Blonde. I had a lift ticket earlier. Well, maybe I shouldn't tell you what I've had earlier.
Shut up and let it...
Okay.
I think that's just you peeing.
I think that's just me peeing. No, it's not. It's not me peeing.
Joanne Richter and Rob Gerard, welcome to the Uxbridge Beat.
Thank you.
Scott, for sure, is very excited about this show because he gets to discuss one of his most favorite topics, beer.
Second Wedge.
Second Wedge beer.
Yeah.
Should be called First Wedge because it's number one.
Except the First Wedge is King City area. We're talking geography.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start there then. Why is Second Wedge called Second Wedge?
Well, good question. So we had a bunch of names that we were considering, and a lot of them had like, oh shoot, that one's kind of owned by this brewery or this one's owned by that. And we were concerned about trademarks, right? So then we sort of did a whole 180 and said, well, why don't we pick something that there's no chance that anyone has ever used this name. Like it's completely unique and a little offbeat. And we wanted to pull in like the trails of Uxbridge to our branding and try to attract people, people use the trails and then come into town and visit the brewery. We wanted to put Uxbridge on the map a little bit from a tourism perspective. So we were going with the landscape, and I looked it up on Wikipedia one night that the Oak moraine, which forms all those beautiful hills and everything, was formed in 4 wedges from east to west, and Uxbridge sits on the Second Wedge. So I said, how about the Second Wedge? And Rob was like, yeah.
Actually, you said, how about, you thought it was the Third Wedge at first.
Oh, at first, yeah.
And I'm like, sure, I like that name.
And then we're like, oh no, we're on the second.
No, we're on the Second Wedge.
Even
we better
better.
be accurate.
Yeah. So we double checked it, and it is correctly stated. Uxbridge is on the Second Wedge of the Oak moraine. And I like the sound of it, and people always ask us what it means, and it gives us a chance to tell them the story.
So say it how you want to say it. How do you want to say Second Wedge?
The Second Wedge.
How about the? No, because that would be preceding a vowel. The Second Wedge.
The Second Wedge. Yeah, I like to have the out there.
But then we did find out that there's a brewery in the States called The Wedge that opened a second location.
Oh, bastards.
They didn't call it the Second Wedge, but people just automatically started tagging us as their new location.
The Second Wedge.
So we had people saying, I'm biking to the Second Wedge today, and I'm looking at his location. He's in the States, and we had to respond.
Well,
you might want to check where you're starting and where you're
There's
finishing.
an Uxbridge, Massachusetts, right? And
Yep.
then there's also an Uxbridge, England.
Yep.
And so we actually got a...
Uxbridge, England. We get inquiries all the time.
And somebody specifically was like, well, where are you located? They were on their way in.
Yeah.
They were literally on their way into the dojo, and we said, I don't think you think who you think we are.
Start swimming.
So with that in mind, obviously you've done what you wanted to do, which was bring people to Uxbridge, to the Second Wedge. So rewind back several years. Tell us how you got started. I'll give a little bit of a preamble. I know you guys from yesteryear of when your daughter used to take voice lessons with me and sing in my choir. So you, for me, were choir parents for quite some time and good friends of mine. And I knew you as having other jobs.
Right.
Rob, you were a videographer. Right? For really cool underwater stuff. Right?
Lots of underwater boats, wildlife stuff up in the Arctic.
Women giving birth.
Women giving birth.
In the Arctic?
No, that was in
Polar bear
Toronto.
babies?
Never filmed a polar bear giving birth, but lots of women.
Okay. Well, didn't know that, but that's interesting. Maybe
Too much
that's
information.
That's going to be a part 2.
No, I think we need to talk about that.
That's going to be a part 2. No. Actually, I know that because you were part of the what was it? The Life Channel. What was that one called?
It was called Birth Stories.
Birth Stories.
Yeah.
I used to watch that when I was home with Hannah. I remember put her down for a nap, have a piece of chocolate cake, watch your show. Okay. Anyways, and you worked for the CNIB.
I did. Yeah.
In the audiobooks category.
That's right.
And so here you are. You're married. You've got kids. how did you depart from audiobooks and videography into opening a brewery?
Every now and then I go back through the reasons, and I could come up with a different reason for every single time I think back on it. I think you probably agree. Like, we both worked in industries. Like, I'm from publishing. Like, I worked at CNIB for a good chunk of time, but before that was publishing. And that was like my area of expertise. And it was a very changing industry at the time. And where I was working, I was doing a lot of downsizing, that kind of thing. I was at that level in my company where we were, waiting for government funding. Government funding was only a part of it. And here's what you're going to need to cut this year. And it was, I love the organization, and I think they're on better footing than at the time, but it was a bit stressful and a bit of a downer for me at that stage in my life. Rob's industry was also changing.
Yeah, I mean, I initially started pretty cool stuff, underwater documentary stuff, wildlife stuff up in the Arctic, and then documentary kind of stuff all dried up and it all became reality TV because it was cheap to produce.
So to clarify, you're the guy holding the camera for the shows.
Yeah.
So you flippantly say cool underwater stuff in the Arctic, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're the guy in a wetsuit, underwater, full scuba gear, trying to avoid seals killing you.
Sharks.
Okay, let's be clear.
Never dived with a seal. But yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, I was not the principal underwater guy. I was more the surface guy. But once you learn to dive, they were like, okay, you're coming underwater. You're going to light, you're going to shoot, you're going to do this and that. And they take advantage of you, which was cool in those days because I was young and stupid. But the reality TV kind of took over. The last 10 years of my career in television was all reality TV, which it was okay at the beginning. And then it just became Groundhog Day. Every day you went into work, you did the same thing because story producers took over. It used to happen in the field where the director and the cameraman worked together and create a story. And then it all became story producers work the storyline in the background, and you had to go and make that story happen from their research kind of thing. So yeah, the end of television for me was 2 shows. They were probably the most dangerous and difficult shows to work on. Cold Water Cowboys, which was amazing because you're working with Newfoundland fishermen, going out in their boats for 7 days, crabbing and living with 7 guys on a boat and just working around the clock all the time. And then the last show I was on was Tornado Hunters. So we were down in southern states. All of a sudden you arrive and you're getting an armored car and you're chasing tornadoes.
Like Twister.
Basically, yeah.
And the first day I was there, we saw 6 tornadoes. I'd never seen a tornado in my life. And the first day we got 6 of them. And then we never got another one. So I only did that for 2 weeks. So I'm still going off and doing these jobs just to make some money, come back, do some more demo, installation kind of stuff. And then the final thing holding us up was a brew house. So I'm in Newfoundland on Cold Water Cowboys, and I got the call that the brew house is going to arrive. And I'm like, I got to give my notice. I'm like, I'm heading home. Leaving this show, and they're like, well, when? I'm like, tomorrow.
The cowboy is riding out.
And they're like, okay, so next time you're in port, I guess you get your stuff off the boat and you fly home. And then
they still love them. So why a brewery? Why a brewery? See, let's backtrack a little bit. Rob and I are beer drinkers. We love beer. We always have been.
We were home brewers.
Okay. So that's where it is right there. You were home brewers. Yeah. That was your thing. Okay, I see.
I mean, and we kind of started home brewing more in earnest when we were like thinking, you know what this town could use? And my head was, I did a commute to Toronto every day. So 3 hours of driving on the best days gives you a lot of time to daydream about not commuting and what could I do in town, right? Every time a vacant space came up in town, I was like, what can we put in there? I want to do something. I wanted to open something in town and be close to home, close to my kids who were still at that age young enough that that would benefit them. Yeah. Then with Rob being away a big chunk at the time and then coming home and having like a whole lot of time with nothing, making your own beer is very sensible to do. At that point, we had a location. I don't remember the timing exactly. We did originally plan to be in the old IGA location,
the old
which
Sears,
is
where John Rodich is now for shoes.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that was our spot, and we were working on that spot. It fell through. So we ended up. There was another location in town, so it's where we are currently, and we went by there. It was our second time looking at it, actually. And I remember Rob walking through and thinking, yeah, I could totally see this working. And I was walking through going like, oh my God, I don't know. This place is very weird. It had a very weird vibe.
And if I can speak honestly, wasn't it busted as a drug up?
It was.
It was the largest grow up in Durham.
He says it with a smile.
Before it was legal.
Yeah, exactly. Before it was legal.
I was so excited about going into this place and busting open walls and finding tons of money.
Yeah, we thought for sure.
There
but
was
It didn't
none.
happen.
No.
Did you have your camera ready on your shoulder?
No, I had my suitcase. I was just going to pack it up and
he wasn't even
put
going
it
to
in the
tell me.
bank.
He would have just been on the road. Like, bye.
I've been here long enough. It was Harvey Acton's. It was Acton Excavating.
Yeah.
It was.
I
But
think they built it.
and they built it and they had all the machines there and everything, but then it had been abandoned
Oh,
and a
no, I
grow-up
remember.
took it over.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, you know, you hear houses that are grow-ups and they have to be completely gutted to be usable. Did you have to gut the location?
We did not. The previous owner, who actually was the person who was convicted, had to clean it all up. So it was
So
completely...
he got all the money.
yeah, found it all out of the
Yeah.
cubbies. Anyway, so by the time we had it, it was completely rehabilitated. And yeah, it did take a lot of work to get that building into shape, but Rob was in there with a jackhammer. We had some amazing construction pals working with us. It was a whole
I actually
crazy
got
summer.
some of the construction crew that I worked on reality television stuff came and did
Cool.
an amazing amount of work with us. And
So much work. But they didn't live anywhere nearby, so they
They
stayed
did
in our
most
house.
of the week on the most of the work on the weekends and crashed at our house. And
Like I
then
had a whole bunch of squatters.
yeah,
Totally
it
had
was,
squatters. We had these big fun dinners every night.
it was a weird time because
Yeah.
we had kids
fun.
and these, you know, all of a sudden there's like 3 construction people in our house.
Yeah, it was
And-
definitely fun.
But I lost 30 pounds, so that was a good time.
Just out of stress?
No,
Hard
the
work.
work.
Oh, it's the work.
I did all the demolition myself.
Right,
So
okay.
I broke floors, we had to dig down, find where the sewer is connected underneath, dig down 4 feet inside right before where the cooler is and where you buy beer. That's a 4-foot hole there that I had to break up and dig up.
Yeah, so definitely like all of the blood, sweat, and tears in that building is real. It's like,
Absolutely.
So somehow you know that you have to dig so that you've got a cooler. How do you get that knowledge? How all of a sudden I drink beer too. I don't wake up one day and go, I should own a brewery, because I know all there is to know about what I'm drinking. Like,
I should know all there is to know about wine. But
Technically, yeah.
technically,
well, we could use a winery in town.
Well, to be honest, all that construction side, I know nothing about construction. I'm not good at building things. I'm good at breaking things. So I could break the concrete. I could dig holes. We have 3 partners who are in town and they had knowledge of construction. One built a subdivision in town and the other 2 are electrical contractors. So they gave us amazing knowledge, took on some...
Okay, we're totally shameless. Who are your partners?
Howard Emmer is the construction dude who created
Heritage Hills too.
Heritage Hills 2.
Yep.
And then Bob Summers and John Summers have Fitzpatrick Fitzy Electrical in town.
Cool.
do they still continue to be partners with you at
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
point? Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
They have ownership stake in
Yeah.
the company.
They have shares. I
Yeah.
mean, they are the most amazing partners that we could have because they're just silent partners. And we have meetings. We tell them we're keeping them in the loop, and they're just
And
Part of the journey.
Yeah,
Be part of the
exactly. And we can
journey is
bounce
good.
ideas off them and all kinds of stuff, but there's no pressure. It's very nice. Very good relationship with all of them.
Yeah, so it was a lucky situation that I had this contact with the construction guys who worked on shows that I was filming, and they were the construction team. Then we hooked up with a construction developer, and then we have electrical contractors, and it's like, well, okay, this is way too easy.
Well, it all started snowballing
Yeah, it
into
did.
awesomeness,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And prior to that, for like 3 years before we were open, there was just a whole lot of research going on, like beyond the building stuff. So just all the, how to open a brewery and what the business plan is. So the business plan was a big
But
project.
if you want to know how this really started, it was with one sentence.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a chair in our house, and Joanne just, been, like she said, had been doing research on stuff that we could do. And one day she just turned to me and she said, we should open a craft brewery. And I said, sure. And that was it.
And
Make
that
it
leads me-
happen.
And that leads
So
me to my
she-
next question, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Is that how you guys got married too? We should get married. Yeah, sure.
no,
Yeah.
I actually know the story. I do actually know the story.
Do I know
And
the story?
Yeah, you were there. I
were
was
there.
told the story.
Well, then,
I know
okay,
the story.
we let them tell the story.
Jen's going to have a much more romantic version.
The romantic version I know is that basically you were holding her in your arms and you said you want to get married and you said yeah, and that was that.
Thank you.
So it was the same. No, it was pretty much. You want to get married? You
Oh,
want to
it's
do a
bigger
brewery?
than that.
Yeah.
Okay, you were buck naked. You had just had sex.
They were under the covers.
And it was after a rock concert.
No, we met at a rock.
Oh, you
no,
met at
we
a rock concert.
sort of
See, I'm
around
getting
a
the
rock
stories
concert.
mixed up.
Yeah, but that's so awesome that you remember that.
Yeah.
Rob doesn't.
I remember it. But I had been in filming in St. Martin and was hanging out with a bunch of young married people. And so it was like St. Martin.
Yeah, I
You
should
buy
probably get
rings in
married too.
St. Martin because there's tons of jewelers. And so I was like, this is kind of a nice lifestyle. So I went and bought a ring on this trip. And I came home after this trip. And one morning, I just rolled over and gave her the ring.
Yeah.
I love
It
that
was very
story.
sweet. Yeah.
So
This is a nice lifestyle. You want to go to St. Martin? Yeah, that would have been better. You want to open a brewery in Uxbridge?
So wait a second. Did you ever get to go to St. Martin?
No.
You, Jerome, come on!
I
Hey,
still
I
have
took
the
her to
ring.
Nassau
I still have
once.
the ring. Yeah, I didn't get to do
It
all
is
the
a nice
travel.
ring.
So when she was 6 months pregnant, I got her on one of the locations, a shoot that I was doing with sharks and stuff, and she was snorkeling with her big belly above me while I was underwater
I get to
doing
watch
shark
them
stuff.
work
And
with sharks. It's
you know,
cool.
like that.
Here, honey,
You're-
watch
you're
me
twice-
die now.
You're twice as appetizing to a shark now.
Probably, yeah. There's
So-
a lot going on there.
So
Yeah.
one of the reasons that Scott and I work really well together is because we're partners.
Yeah.
And we've known that from the beginning. We just clicked and here's my partner, here we go. Like
Yeah.
jump in, let's go.
Yeah.
You guys are obviously partners. And so you had a separate lifestyle leading up to this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about wet feet, cold feet, full in,
Yeah.
like your partners, and let's go. Like that's
It's a great
we
question.
wouldn't question it.
Yeah.
You guys haven't questioned it
We
either.
didn't question it. I mean, I didn't question it.
We obviously share a house together. And we also share an office space together, so we are never apart anymore. And it's like it's a weird thing because I used to go away on 3-month trips, come back, and then it was that was normal. Now we spend every minute of the day together.
But we work well together.
We do. It's like it's not a bad thing.
That in, just slide that in.
I feel like
We
she's
work well
prompting.
together.
I know. He's like, so, we're together all the time. No, we really are together all the time. I think the pandemic stresses that too. Like, you don't have many outlets outside of yourselves, but it's still a very good working partnership. We knew when we were starting up the brewery that we were going to work fine together. Because of my publishing background, I had done some author videos with children's authors, and Rob would come in and do the shooting, and I would script and direct or whatever. And we did a lot of that. We did a fair bit of that stuff. And we already knew that we had this really almost super, like, extremely natural flow of work between us, even more comfortable than even just ordinary life. So I knew when we started planning the brewery that it was going to work really well. And it definitely does. Every married couple who works together 24/7 will tell you. Hold on, I'm looking at you too.
Oh yeah.
There are
Yeah, yeah.
challenges, 100%.
Yeah.
There are definitely challenges, but I think, it's not every couple that can make that work. And I'm super grateful that we have been able to. And you're a great buddy to work with, buddy.
So, Joanne, what are Rob's greatest strengths with the business?
Extremely decisive, extremely creative.
He's sweating now. You can't
no.
tell us the podcast is all audio, but he's
I
sweating.
can show you the questions. It's not the weakness. There's no weakness question. I'm asking Joanne.
Carry on.
No, Rob is, I am a classic Libra, say what you will. I'm not an astrology freak, but I will weigh every question every which way and take too long to come to a decision. Whereas Rob just kind of sees things very clearly and makes very good decisions very quickly. Rob is a very, very creative person. So a lot of the kind of social media stuff that we do and the marketing stuff, I am good at executing the stuff, but I'm not so great with the fun, cool ideas. Rob is he's just like a fountain of cool ideas all the time. So yeah, we couldn't do it without him
What are Joanne's greatest strengths?
She is the one that put the whole business plan together. All the behind the scenes stuff is because of Joanne. So the basis, the financials, all that kind of stuff, like, well, okay, we're going to do this. She runs numbers every day. She's running numbers. Organizing our schedule for brewing, we can predict 3 months from now how much we're going to need because she can look at data and pull history and say, this is what we're going to need. Our brewers are kind of like, okay, how do you know that?
Mark my words.
But, and everything's pretty damn accurate. It's like down to the, 100 cans of beer. Like, did we can enough? Did we not have can enough? Yeah, Joanne's, she's the backbone of the whole brewery. She keeps it on its toes.
Oh, thanks.
So that's the business side. Now I'm going to confess, I kind of like beer, kind of, sort of, and I'll have a beer or maybe two, but it's not my go-to. But with that in mind, tell us about the brewing process, because I literally know nothing about brewing beer. I'm going to hazard a bet that you guys don't, or you do, or is there a brew master? How does all that work?
Yeah, so we have a head brewer who is extremely talented and skilled, and it's just him and an assistant brewer, and they do all of the production. We do work very closely with them. Like Rob especially kind of really oversees what they do. I can tell you about beer brewing I'll try to do like capsule summary as quick as possible without boring people. So beer starts with a grain that has to be sort of soaked and cooked like porridge, basically. So the grain with beer is predominantly barley. Most of the world's barley is used in beer production, and most beer contains mostly barley. You will see wheat beers and you'll have beers with some rye in them, but it's mostly barley. So barley on its own has to be malted before it can be turned into beer. So malting just means the grain is wetted, it's germinated, and then it's dried. Sometimes it is kilned and basically cooked a little bit like coffee beans would be cooked. So color can be developed and flavor. That then becomes, it's like very crispy at that point. So that grain gets milled, it gets mixed in with warm to hot water. It's like a porridge is made out of that. So it's cooked down. All the sugars are extracted from this grain, converted into sugars. And then there's a whole process where all of the sugar is flushed out of the grains. And then that sugar is conveyed along with its water. So it's now like a syrupy thing called wort. It's like the malt syrup that gets brought into through pumps and hoses into a brew kettle.
So can I interrupt for 1 second? Does that all happen at your place?
Yes, everything happens at our place.
So the grains come to your place?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
We start with bags of grains. So we have these 25 kilogram bags of grains in a mill room, and we get deliveries at least once a week of these big pallets full of grains, and we store them. And so we go through grain very quickly. So then you have separated out this sugary liquid, the wort, from the pile of spent grain. So the spent grain gets shoveled out and put into giant containers outside. Cooper's Farm, drives up and piles all these giant totes full of spent grain onto their truck and drives it off, usually the same day, and they feed it to their cows. It's great cow food. So that's a nice local connection. So then what's left behind is this liquidy stuff. It's boiled down. Hops are added, so that adds flavor and aroma and bitterness, which you need bitterness to counteract the sweetness of this malt sugary liquid. So this concoction that's been boiled now gets very quickly chilled and moved into a big tank that's a fermentation tank. And once that's cooled down and in that tank, that's when yeast is added. Yeast comes to us from a lab in Guelph in these like big slurry pitches, and we dump it all in there, and then the yeast starts to act on the sugars in this mixture, and that's what creates the alcohol and the CO2. So you get a little bit of carbonation starting. It converts all the sugars to alcohol. The brewers are very carefully monitoring the entire fermentation phase, so they know exactly when to remove it from the yeast and exactly when to adjust the temperatures. And the final touch after 2 to 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the beer, is that it's moved into a finishing tank. It can be filtered on the way there. So if you're looking at Elgin Blonde right now, it's very, very, very clear. That's because it's gone through a filter. The carbonation is adjusted using a process that we have that's kind of like an overnight carbonation that just gets it to the right point, and then we package it. So I tried to be quick with that. That was really long.
So you made reference to the big vats. That's what we see in the brewery. Those are the vats.
The big tall ones. Those are our fermentation tanks. Yeah.
So we have 5 fermenters and 2 bright tanks. So the bright tanks are the conditioning tanks.
Right.
Okay, so something like high grass, which has got a lot of ginger notes to it. So when do your flavors start to take place? Like, is that
in the kettle? So they actually physically hand chop the ginger. Lemongrass arrives chopped up. So they just throw those into like muslin bags, and then they throw that in the boil in the kettle, and that just extracts the flavor. They got to pull them out, and then those flavors are into that liquid again in the kettle, and then it goes into the fermentation. And then high grass, we ferment at a higher temperature, and that helps to add flavors that you wouldn't normally get at a normal temperature of fermentation. So we call it a saison.
The saison process.
It's a saison process, but it's not using saison yeast. There are different yeasts that you can use that would create saison. We just ferment at a higher temperature, and it gives that saison flavor and that saison funk that you can get with high grass.
Okay, so not every brewery's doing it right from scratch, are they?
All the craft breweries would be bringing in,
right from
Some of the smaller places buy already milled. You can buy milled grain, but we have a mill, and most small breweries our size would have a mill and mill their own. It's just fresher.
Yeah, like there's some breweries in the world who would use like malt syrup that they buy, but that would be very expensive, and the quality of the product would be far below. So that's more of a home brewer thing that people would buy like a can of malt syrup or whatever.
So how do we decide on things like flavors? Is that like a conception before the whole process begins, and then we interrupt the process to sample it? Explain that.
Our very first brewer had a ton of experience in the industry. So we would explain flavor profiles, beers we like, and he would brew something and it'd be like, that's what I was talking about. So now he's moved on, and we have another younger guy. So we have established recipes, and it's like cooking. You have a recipe, it's written down, and he follows that recipe. It's a complicated process. It's very scientific because water is the most important ingredient in beer. Hops are important, grain's important, it's all important, but water is very important, and Uxbridge water changes constantly. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because even if you go on any of the, like, let's say Facebook groups, is anybody's water feeling really chlorinated?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and that to say, does that affect you too?
It does, yeah.
It's not so much chlorination, it's the pH level. So it depends. We have, I think, 2 or 3 wells that they use, or storage, whatever they call them.
Yeah, the municipal wells.
Yeah, so the municipal wells. And when they switch, or when you go from winter to summer, we can see, we're measuring the pH. There's little science. We have a lab upstairs. So they're measuring and reading our water. And one of our beers, 3 Rocks, has been a nightmare since we started it because it was brewed a certain way. By accident, it came out another way, but we liked it better that way. And so we're like, recreate that.
Damn.
It's like it constantly changes because the water changes. So we think we've got it nailed down now from different processes. But when the water changes, there's things we can do to chemically change and match the profile that we like. You can do reverse osmosis, and you can strip everything out of your water and then rebuild the water to how you like it. But we're in Uxbridge. We should brew beer that is made with our water. We want the water profile to pretty much be what it is. If we have to tweak it a little bit, it's okay, but we don't want to strip it out completely and then rebuild it, because then you can make beers from anywhere around the world. So California's water profile is this. I'll strip our water out and rebuild the profile like California. That doesn't make it local or regional. Right. So that's kind of what we want to be, is we want to make beer that's made with Uxbridge water.
How much of a taste change is there?
It's not so much the taste change. It's like so with 3 Rocks, it was brewed to be a sort of, not a clear beer, but it wasn't filtered. The one we liked, nothing dropped out. So the hops stayed in suspension in the beer. And it's the Summit hops we use are like, it's really kind of a unique flavor. And it was just really like, wow, that's what we like. That's what we want it to be all the time. To make the hops stay in the beer instead of falling out became a very difficult process to sort of nail down. We thought we had it, And then the next batch would clarify completely. And it wasn't a bad beer, but it just wasn't Three Rocks because that Summit flavor falls out when the hops fall out too.
Yeah, so the pH just sort of affects the behavior of so many parts of the brewing process.
Did you ever get anybody else though that goes, "Hey, I had this Three Rocks. It tastes a little different than it did last time"?
Constantly.
All the time.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have some pretty knowledgeable customers, and they're pretty picky, and
Good
they
palate,
let you know if Three Rocks is off.
Yeah, but we're
not
we're
off,
like
but
not
just
off, but like
different.
slightly different, and we're like, yeah, we're working on that, and like it always comes out. We wouldn't put out a batch of Three Rocks that we didn't think tasted great.
No, we've
Because
done.
we
Three
are
Rocks.
so picky about Three Rocks ourselves. That is our personal beer that we drink at home more than anything. And Rob's Three Rocks obsession runs very, very deep. But there have been like very slight variations where we're like, well, it still tastes like Three Rocks. I can see it's not exactly like the last batch, and I know exactly why. So there, some people have very, very
See, and I
refined
thought that
palates.
was me.
Oh, okay, so you've noticed that.
Oh, it was with Fat Bike.
Oh, with Fat Bike, yep.
Yeah.
With Fat Bike, it's different hops, like year by year. Like with Fat Bike, we use a local hop grower, and especially with the smaller farms, you're going to get a lot of variation year by year. I mean, we would never put out a beer that we thought, well, this is not great. This doesn't taste good. It's speaking the same language. It's the same grower. You know, it's got the same basic profile to the style, and it feels like the beer to us. Then we will be.
But I know what
happy
you're
with it.
talking about because our friends Dave and Denise had Fat Bike and offered that to us, and we liked it. And then we went back for it again another time, and we're like, yeah, not so much.
It just wasn't the same.
It just wasn't the same. It wasn't that. It was just you didn't remember it as fondly as.
Yeah, and I thought it was me. I thought, oh, that must have had a really good party, and I must have been drinking or something because I really enjoyed it then. And I was like, yeah, it's all right now.
And
like,
you know, beer enjoyment is like anything. You are going to have days where you're like all over it, and other days where it's like, oh, it's pretty good. It's all right.
I find when I go in and we're canning something or we taste it at the fermenter or the bright, wherever it is in the stage, I have an opinion, but I don't give it all the time anymore because I know that I've either just eaten something. So I have to taste it a number of times before I'll really say, okay, wait a second, there's something not right here, or this is perfect. Because sometimes I come in and I drink Three Rocks and I'm like, there's absolutely no bitterness there. And it's like, it's because I've eaten something before that's just masking.
So now you recognize your bias.
Yeah, everybody has a tasting bias.
So then I'm going to wait. I'm going to have it another time of the day. I'm going to wait until I've had it multiple different times, had different things to eat before I actually will comment now because it drives the brewers crazy.
But
I was
that's
going to
the
ask
thing.
you that though. So food pairings. So like standardized, if you can go through your brands and say, okay, this is really good for this. Are there staples where you just go, oh yeah, this is a really good one for chicken, or this is a really good one for nachos? Do you have anything like that where you go, yeah, these are the beers I would go to for that?
There's some, standard flavor pairing rules that you can follow, but a lot of times we sometimes try things on a whim and we're like, oh my gosh, I would never have thought to put those things together. So we kind of collect those, in our minds and try to share them as much as possible. But beers that have a good hop presence will do really well with spicy foods. I find, well, if you like spicy food and you want to enhance the spice, then drinking something hoppy will really just punch it up even more because they really play well together. It's like hop spice, like it's a little fun flavor thing. If you're not into spicy food, you might not like that sensation, but we like to recommend it. Something like Elgin Blonde, which is more subdued and elegant and clean flavored, you would want to pair this with something that wouldn't be overwhelmed by one of the stronger beers. So this, again, would go like really nicely with chicken or fish or, like sushi or that kind of thing.
Tonight it went great with pizza.
There you go.
To be honest, all the beers go well with pizza.
Let's be honest.
Beer
That's
is a
true.
good combo. Yeah. So
Like Rainmaker is good with beef.
yes.
It's been made into sausages at a number of different places. We've marinated steak in Rainmaker, barbecued it,
Barbecued pork.
barbecued pork.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He's really good with it.
Yeah.
Monday Night Piper's been, passionate cook makes fondue with it.
So
We
with
sell-
mushrooms and like savory, like that warm fall food. Like I love Monday Night Piper and all that kind of stuff. Like a
And then
chicken pot
the
pie.
cheese is we used to drink wine, and wine and cheese was always the thing for us, and it's like that's what you did. But once we got it more into the beer world, beer and cheese go so much better. So we, with the help from Passionate Cook, with their amazing palates over there, we had tastings, and they would recommend cheese with the beer, and we would taste, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. Like 3 Rocks and a really old cheddar was really amazing.
So then let's jump into that line of questioning. So you guys are a brewery. You're not a restaurant.
Right.
And at the beginning, there was sort of some food offered, whether it was bags of chips or whatever. And then you expanded into takeout. Is that right? Like you could order from different restaurants. And so where are we at now with the food offerings? Okay, where are we at now in a normal world that's not a pandemic where we're not shut down?
Right.
If we were allowed everything carte blanche, 100%, where are you at with food coming in?
Never going to be in our intentions to be a restaurant. We are focusing on brewing beer, but you get that people want to eat when they're having a beer. So, and we want to support all the restaurants in town. So anybody can bring any food from any restaurant in town. Some of the restaurants are delivering. Uber's in town now, so you can get Uber, but some of the restaurants are doing their own deliveries.
And we've always allowed outside food.
Yeah, so you can always bring your own food, but now we became friends with restaurants owners from Port Perry, Foundry Restaurant. And
They're the pizza guys, right?
Yeah. So through many just sitting down at the brewery and having multiple conversations about you should open a pizza place here. We finally did it, and they purchased the container. They purchased everything, and they own all that infrastructure. We are like, put it on our property. You run the pizza. We don't want anything to do with it. And just bring people and have another option that they can make the pizza. They sell the pizza, they make the money, we sell beer, and it's a great relationship.
Yeah.
And so they can grab their pizza from Foundry, bring it into the brewery, have their beer, and that's awesome.
And it's right in the beer garden, so they don't have to wait for delivery. And
can you actually order it from your place?
Well,
Like if you wanted to bring it home, you mean?
No. Like if you're sitting in the beer garden, can you order pizza from the
you
Foundry?
go right. You go to the container and
you go yourself. Okay.
You go there. You order from them.
Yeah.
We don't handle any of the food part of it, so you go directly to them, and they make the pizza. They give you a buzzer. You get a buzzer. You go get the pizza.
That's
pick it
awesome.
up.
Yeah. So they didn't open until September of last year. I think it was just after Labor Day. And then they only went till the season ended because of the cold weather, mid-October. So it was a very short season, but it was a really fabulous season. It was like a great way to come back after all the pandemic closures. Wah, wah.
Hey, Amanda, your kids have grown so much.
Hi, Katie. Yeah, they're bigger now. Yours too. They seem to be doing well.
Honestly, the lockdowns and isolation have been really rough on us, but I got them into karate at Okami Kai, and it has made such a positive difference for them.
Really? Our family needs something so badly right now. They need to be moving and motivated.
Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness, striving to bring out the best in the community since 1999.
Look them up. The teachers are great, and the program is welcoming for all ages.
Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness.
Let's talk about dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about dogs.
Dogs are a big part of what we do.
Absolutely. You know, you go to a restaurant, dogs are not allowed unless they're service dogs.
Yeah.
How do you guys, step 1, how do you guys allow dogs in? Step 2, why did you get shut down from not allowing dogs in? Step 3, how did you get the dogs back?
Well, we didn't create the whole dogs in brewery. We just followed along.
Okay.
We weren't the first brewery in Ontario. We were like, all breweries have dogs. And we're like, we have a dog. We're going to bring our dog in, and we're going to let people bring in dogs. And as we did this, and we actually, before we opened, and we had a pre-inspection with a health inspector, we said, we're going to have dogs in here. We don't have food. We're going to have cheese boards, and we sell beer. And the guy's like, beer isn't part of our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So, it's fine. You're good to have dogs. So we're like, good. We're just following the law. We have dogs for a number of years. And then we get this anonymous complaint that calls the health department, and they come out and say, you have dogs. Well, yes, we have dogs. You've been here, and we've had about 5 inspections with dogs here. And they're like, well, no, now it's different. You've had a complaint, and you can't have dogs.
Yeah.
It's
They're
still
like,
an
"Here's the
anonymous
law."
complaint. You still don't know who did it?
No. Well,
We know, but
we do actually know who it is. But
talk about
No,
that.
you have to say it. But I was, But
it's not anyone consequential. It's just
It's a bad situation.
Yeah.
And so then we just were like, okay, well, we'll get rid of food. And then these inspectors started saying, well, you have to have food because bars have to have food. And we're like, we're not a bar. And how do you not know this? You inspect us. We're a brewery, tasting room. We have a special license. We have special rules that you have to, you can only serve a 12-ounce pour.
Food is not required.
Food's not required because you're a tasting room. You're just there to taste beer, sample beer, buy beer to go. So we go through this whole process, and it's just becoming mind-numbing because now we're talking to a wall. So Dave Barton, our mayor, reached out, was super helpful, got us down to have a meeting at the health department, tried to iron things out, come up with a solution. They still wouldn't budge. Also, Peter Bethlenfalvey became involved, and he was very open to listening to what we had to say, and there was still, while we were shut down and we couldn't have dogs, pretty much every brewery out there was still allowing dogs and nobody was doing anything about it. So that's what we were saying to the health, we're not calling any brewery out. We kind of got them on board and went to other breweries and
Help
said,
us out. Yeah.
help us out.
Because they're coming for you next.
Basically, that was it.
And some breweries had experience with health departments.
Other
but
breweries have been shut down.
they've been shut down or been told they couldn't have dogs, but then they would relax the rules once, it was in place for a little bit. And then if you do this, then it's okay. So
much
it was
gray
just
area.
like, we got to get some clarification on this. Are we allowed to have dogs or not? We'll follow the rules, but you can't say one day you can and one day you can't.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people like Dave Barton, Peter Bethlenfalvey were just like, okay, let's make this a clear thing.
Yes or no?
So we did this petition. We got, 11,000
Yeah, something like that. It was
signatures. We had a lot of signatures, physical signatures on it. It wasn't an online petition.
Yeah.
We did. Scott and I signed
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Because they said it has to be a physical sheet of paper. You can't do it online. It won't be accepted. Anyway, we hand all these papers, a big stack of papers to Peter Bethlenfalvey's assistant because you couldn't hand it to him. He said, I'm not allowed to touch it. You got to hand it to her. We handed it to her, and they ended up changing the law. So now it's not just breweries, but restaurant patios, if they choose, can have dogs. So any restaurant in Ontario now can have a dog on the patio.
They call this the second wedge bylaw change? You didn't market that?
No, specifically the Rob Gerard bylaw.
It's great because it's all on the same bill that restaurants and breweries and winery tasting rooms and stuff like that can all have dogs, which is great. But it all came down, like the law changed January 1st, 2020. And then what happened 2.5 months later? The pandemic struck, so things got
having
shut
said
down.
that, so it happened January 1st. We were in Ottawa mid-January for our friend's birthday. And we were in a brewery. I think it's called Good Dog Brewery, if I'm not mistaken.
In Ottawa?
Right, in Ottawa. Something Dog Brewery. And I spoke to the owners. They had their dogs there. Our friends had their dogs there. I'm getting the name wrong.
Yeah.
But I talked to them about it, and they said, they
Stray
were,
dog.
Right? Yes.
Stray dog.
In Orleans. Is that the?
Might be Orleans.
Orleans, where our buddy lives. Anyways, but we had talked about you guys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we know about that," and blah blah blah. So the ruling came down January 1st, and not a week, maybe 2 weeks later, we were there, and they had their dogs there. So there you go, success, right?
Awesome.
And then the pandemic.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that briefly because nobody really wants to talk about it forever. Because my gosh. So hasn't been easy, obviously.
Yeah.
But you're still surviving through it.
We're still
you
here.
guys still like each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Yeah. No, and that what?
Okay.
That's not to be understated, right? Because now here you are, your partner.
This is the first interview where I've seen two people hold up cue cards. It's like, yes, I like him a lot. I am lucky I get to live with him.
Look, we worked in television and publishing. We know what's going on here.
But here's the opportunity for things to go terribly sideways and terribly wrong.
Yeah,
So
it definitely adds stress. I mean,
But the town's been amazing. When everything went totally south, when the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, the support from our town was amazing. Like we were selling a lot of beer. People, I think, people thought, oh, we're going to take 2 weeks off. Let's get some beer and support everybody. And then, what are we, 2 years later?
Yeah.
I don't think people have the energy to drink that much beer anymore.
Or the money.
Try me. Oh, no, sorry. Did that come out loud? That was like, that was really instantaneous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, it's been stressful for everyone. And I think people are burning out. So we've seen now this is the biggest drop we've had so far. It's been tough for everybody. I think everybody's seeing the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we forecast into the next few months, let's hope and pretend that everything's going to be getting better. Everything's going to be improving over the crappiness of winter into spring, into summer. Essentially, you guys could have an absolute killer season.
We could. We will.
Yeah,
we will.
Well, as soon as that pizza oven opens up again,
I'm there.
It is amazing pizza. Like they put a lot of effort and thought into it. Like his dough process is 3 days. You know, he could make a dough in 1 day, ferment it overnight, and but it's kind of like our beer. We're very picky on it. He's very picky on how his pizza's going to be, and it's just a good marriage that we have this pizza and beer. It's
what could
phenomenal.
be better than
Exactly.
that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really nice.
That's awesome. Okay, what's been a big, proudest moment in the brewery?
Oh my goodness. Many proud moments. As far as beer or just like the company, I guess.
Oh, either or both.
Many.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry.
the dog thing was a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, getting a law changed across Ontario was like a big achievement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really felt big. Having our beer out there, like across
Winning an
Ontario.
award, we won awards.
Yeah.
Rainmaker won a gold at the Ontario Brewing Awards in 2018.
Just, I think like seeing Three Rocks and Monday Night Piper on LCBO shelves across Ontario. We did a holiday gift pack this winter, which took us like a year to get this thing off the ground, and seeing that on the shelves and it sold so well, that made us really happy.
We just heard today that it had a 98% sell through
by the end of December.
Yeah. So that's LCBO is hard to deal with sometimes. I'm not going to go there. Cut that.
No. We understand. We did a wine tour in Prince Edward County in the fall, and they're all small mom and dad corporations out there.
Right.
And they say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not worth it for them to put into the LCBO because of the upsell. It just rips them off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They take a very big cut, and there's a lot of bureaucracy to get to that point. And then
We don't want to go there.
I don't want to go.
She just said bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy.
See that? Bureaucracy.
That being said, though, is there a different percentage from, like, let's say I go to the beer store or the LCBO in town to go and get your beer? Do you get more if I go there as opposed to if I went to an LCBO somewhere else? It's always the same. Okay.
No,
It's
same.
all one and the same.
Yeah.
Which
We have
is
to sell-
far less than if we came to you directly.
Yeah,
Yes.
because we have to sell, alcohol has to be sold at the same price everywhere. So we have to sell it at our place for the same price that LCBO is going to sell it. So for LCBO to make money, we have to sell it to them cheaper than if we're selling
So
it.
it's definitely, and this is what I really want to make sure that people know, it's definitely more lucrative for you guys, for people that are saying they want to shop local, to go to your brewery and not to go to LCBO to go and buy your beer.
Right.
Okay.
Direct to the brewery is the best profit margin for us, and it benefits us and our staff the most. That said, our biggest customers are like the LCBO in Uxbridge and Vince's Market in Uxbridge. And so if it's a convenient alternative for people, we're very happy to keep that alive because they're just like another retail point for us. But yes, if you can come to the brewery, we so appreciate that.
It's easy. Like you said, it's easy to go to Vince's and go, oh, and if I'm going to buy beer, I'm going to buy local. But if you really want to shop local, then yeah, I think that...
Go get her down.
Because that was surprising to me when we were doing that wine tour. It was that when we found it, what the percentage was, we were we were stunned. We couldn't believe that that's how much they were taking.
What the market is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the cost of sales, right? And it's just like if you can't make do with just your location and only selling out of your location, you need to sell further out, then that's just that cost is going to be built in.
We have a dear friend in Ottawa, John Terrian, who owns several dojos out there, and he managed to get a personalized beer through his local craft brewery. Mm-hmm. And I know you've had a chat with Rob.
Talked about it. Yeah.
So what, and maybe that was serious, maybe it wasn't, but on a serious note, let's say an investor comes to you with, real money and says, we want a personalized beer. Is that something that you can provide? And how do you go about that?
We get this request a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought it was
No, we do.
It's a great
and it's
request, but yeah.
We have 4 main core beers and we have 4 seasonals going, 4, 5, 6 seasonals at any time. So that's a lot for us to keep going. And then for everybody who wants to have a beer, I mean, it's a cool thing, But we're just not big enough to be able to do that, that we can brew a beer specifically for somebody, and then the volume that you'd have to sell that at.
To make some money with it.
Yeah, so then you got to making labels isn't cheap.
Nope.
Getting them put on the can and then canning itself there's a lot of logistics in that.
And plus, beer has a finite shelf life. You want your beer to taste the very best. Each batch of beer should only be out there for like 2 months, ideally 3 months, is fine. But if you're doing 15 hectoliters, so 1,500 liters of a beer, and it's all going to one place that's going to try to sell that's a lot of beer, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of places will do white label type stuff where they'll take, this is our Elgin Blonde, but we're going to put a label on it and sell it as the Dojo Special. I mean,
or that's your wedding special or whatever.
Right.
We did it once.
It's hard to make it really financially viable for us as a brewery because it does add a level of complication.
So we had one person, or I forget what they were, but it was
an award show.
And they're like, just put our label on this beer. So we did it, and we sent it all to them, and they're like, okay, well, we didn't use it all. Can you buy this back? And we're like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no, because it's your beer.
Yeah, so this is what you run into is people just don't understand how much volume it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then how can we sell this award beer with your name on it? What's it going to mean to the brewery? Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it gets
Because I know
complicated.
the firefighters have got some brewery that are working with them.
In town?
There's the Port Perry one,
Yeah.
There's also a new brewery in Toronto called Red Tape Brewery that is, their whole business model is that they do custom beers for people.
What are your next steps with the brewery? Are you going to, or do you even need to expand? Do you want to expand? Do we want to move into more of the farmer's market situation? You talked about Foundry Pizza. Are we happy where we are? What are the next steps?
Yeah, I want to grow big.
Definitely want to
Like physically grow bigger?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Keep drinking.
Every bite tonight will get
Another square foot.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, there's potential to build onto the building, more warehousing. We just bought a canning line. So we've been doing mobile canning where they actually bring the canning line to us. It takes an hour and a half to set up every time.
Costs a lot of money.
So for like a third of what we're paying, financing a canning line is way cheaper in the long run. So, and then once we own it after 5 years, then that money's now going into our pockets. But it was a big deal to know, do we want to commit to a canning line? Do we know breweries that bought massive, huge bottling lines and then 2 weeks later, everybody's gone to cans? Do you want to commit that kind of money? Well, we're pretty confident cans are where it's going to stay. It's just going to allow us way more freedom, especially with COVID. We were having to book months in advance for canning line dates, and that was becoming problematic strategically. What do we brew? When do we need this beer?
And how much are we canning?
How much are we canning? How much are we kegging?
Because you have to commit
restaurants
ahead
are
of time.
closed now, so let's not keg anymore. We got all these kegs. What are we going to do with these kegs? We can't can from kegs. So.
Okay, so let me interrupt because again, I know nothing. So you get all your beer, but previous to you having your own canning line, now there's a company that does the canning for you.
Right.
So what's the process? How do you get the beer from you to them to can it and back to you? What happens
They bring the canning line to us.
Oh, okay.
So that's they just offload the exact same canning line we just bought. It's on wheels.
Oh.
They load it into the brewery. The setup is like about an hour and a half. We just took off a hose, and then it's this whole process of once it gets going, it's a assembly line kind of thing. The beer gets put in the can, comes off the table, you pack it into cases, get it, stack it into the walk-in. But we had to commit to certain amounts of beer that you're going to can with the canning line. And they bring those cans and you got to fill them. And so we're all constantly battling of how many cans do we need? Do we need to do the whole batch, 3/4 of the batch, half the batch, keg half of it?
Yeah, so if you're not canning, you're putting it into kegs for draft beer. And the draft beer situation's been changing like every other week, right? Sorry.
Yeah. So now we can make those decisions. We can can 500 cans if we want and keg the rest, or we can do all of it and make that decision the next day. So once that's in place, we won't get it until March, I think.
So with us, we're trying to get supplies. So like our uniform supplier couldn't get a container in for months. So do you have any problem with that?
No, it's been endless. It's like as soon as one is over, the next one happens. I mean, it's been malt. So we've been having to order malt 2 weeks in advance, where normally you could do it 3 days in advance.
So that would be our malted barley grain for the beer.
The grain, yeah. Pretty much everything we use has been hit by supply issues. And shipping costs have gone way up.
Yes.
We just had some chemicals and the shipping went up 100%. Without any notice, it's like, here's the bill.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, January is when all the suppliers are like, so here's our price increase for the year. And they're like, oh, here we go again.
That's just fuel, you think, mostly? Or is it actual supply, like they just can't get their stock?
I think supply, like I know there's been a massive shortage of aluminum cans across North America because of the pandemic, because people are not drinking draft beer in restaurants and bars.
Right.
So everybody's canning everything they brew and trying to sell as much of it that way. So there's definitely been a can shortage in North America.
We have some in the garage. Can we just refill them? Can we just
You
give them back?
you can take them back.
Recycle, but you can't refill them.
Just
Get
put
them
some
back in
saran
the
wrap over the top there.
Yeah, I think so. Luckily, we work with a company that has a lot of can supply, so we haven't been touched by that. But it's definitely, you're always aware of it. You know, even a CO2 supply. Yeah.
CO2's been more in the States than here. We never had an issue, but everything except for yeast. We haven't had an issue with yeast yet.
So far.
Okay, we're going to do some rapid fire, and you each get an answer, and you don't have to defer to each other. You can be independent of each other.
All right, cool.
Winter or summer?
Summer. We talking
Right now, I'm like winter. Okay, but for the business, summer.
Okay.
Winter sucks for the business.
I think I know this, but I have to ask anyway. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones.
What?
Only because I know.
Yeah, the Beatles.
I like this dichotomy. Superman or Batman?
Superman.
I don't
Don't
care.
understand. Yeah, don't care.
The Flash. Favorite color?
Purple.
They're all good.
It's easy rapid fire. It's like, I don't know. I don't care. Pour me another beer. I don't care.
Okay, this might be a little controversial, and Mayor Dave wouldn't give us his answer. Let's see what you guys do. What's your favorite restaurant in town?
Ooh, no. No.
Foundry Pie.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, no. They're all our customers. We
Yeah.
love them all. They're incredible. And I literally do love them all. I do takeout from different ones and all different. We have jewels in our town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you need to pick one restaurant. We
No.
just have such a great variety that you can get what you need in this town is pretty amazing. When we first bought our house here, and we said to the real estate agent, we want to go and celebrate, and where should we go? And they're like, well, there isn't really a lot of places to go. And now you got Urban Pantry, you got Colonel McGrady's, Wixon's, Tin.
Yeah.
We had Tin Mill. It was awesome.
Slabtown now?
Slab
Yeah.
Town. We got Jurgen's Delis. We got a deli in town.
Sushi, Thai.
Sushi place.
Let's just make it easy then. What's
Yeah.
your favorite burger? Where?
I like Urban Pantry for burgers. They
Okay.
do some pretty good
Like the
burgers.
bison or bison burger or
Both.
just regular burger?
Both.
Okay.
I like the bison, yeah.
Yeah.
Got that lean thing going on. Yeah, we're lucky now. We have great choice in town. I'm very lucky.
If you could speak to anybody who's alive today, who would it be?
Everybody who's alive today. I don't really care about people.
Oh,
And yet here you are with us, so thank you.
No, I mean, I'm anybody alive today. I'm
Stay on the cue cards, Rob. Seriously. Like,
thinking about celebrities, whatever. And it's
yeah,
like,
no, don't think about celebrities. Think about like people making a difference in the world. Greta Thunberg.
yeah, why?
I just think she's an interesting little gal. I'd love to pick her brain and see, feel like she's so young and has cool ideas and strong opinions.
I don't know. I can't really think of anybody.
We read the paper every morning. And who would you have dinner with? Who's alive today?
Echo.
Yeah.
Your dog. Oh, she's lovely.
Well, okay, so this is because basically the way that this question came up was comedian Ron White, and I talked about it with Leisha when she was on. And so he was asked on a radio show one time, he said, if you could have a conversation with anybody, living or dead, who would it be? And he said, living. so that's what I said. Okay, you know what? We're gonna have to separate this. Yeah. So if you could have a conversation with anyone who has passed away now, who would it be?
Anybody who's passed away. You go.
Your mom?
You want to talk to my mom?
No, you.
You want to talk to my mom? No, maybe you want to talk to your own mom.
Yeah, it's a facial expression that went with it. You want to talk to my mom?
We had some good conversations, but no, I mean, so sorry, I'm not going to speak for you. I know who my person would be.
Okay.
John Lennon.
Yeah. Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess Keith Richards, but he's still alive. Although,
But is he really? You might fit into
tumor.
both categories.
Well, actually, so now
he does.
on this same vein, so there was I think it's a bar in Wisconsin because it was Betty White's birthday, and then they had a thing, and I guess London, is that it?
Langdon.
Langdon? No.
No.
London was her deceased husband. But
I don't
anyway.
know his last name.
But anyway, I guess he lived in Wisconsin. And so she went to go to this town where he lived, and she went to the pub. And so, Betty White's in the pub kind of thing. And so they have a chalkboard now of celebrities. If you could buy a beer, who would you buy a beer for kind of thing? And so people all bought Betty White a beer. I think it was like 42 beers or something.
Brilliant.
So now she's passed away. So they have all this money. And so they're going to donate it to an animal shelter.
Of course, yeah.
But if there was anybody that could walk into the pub where you would go, beer's on me, who would it be? Like, because we're
Not
trying,
the pub, their tasting
the tasting room. Sorry, the tasting room. Tasting room where you're allowed to pour 12 ounces. Yeah.
But then that all changed after that.
Okay.
Okay. Right,
With their dog.
yeah. With their dog. So Echo's looked after.
Oh, I'm so not into.
Anyone.
People.
No, he's not into celebrities.
Not into.
No, but it doesn't have to be celebrities. I know
could
when
be-
you asked me this stuff, it was like my instant answer was my parents. Like, apparently you don't want to talk to your parents, but you think Joanne does.
I'd talk to them. I guess. I don't know.
Joanne?
I have a lot of heroes out there, but okay, so like anyone from the Beatles, of course. There's some pretty cool people in the beer world. I've actually said hello to Garrett Oliver before. I think he's a very cool brewer and writer. He's from Brooklyn Brewery. Very cool. Taught me a lot about beer tasting and pairing. That would be a cool one to have come to the brewery. What else? Property Brothers. Rob worked with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was a dud question. Sorry. I mean,
That's
good
okay.
answer. Sorry.
No, but
Good
sometimes
answer.
you don't have the answers,
Yeah,
right? Like, that's
no.
okay. That's okay.
Okay, if God is alive.
No, it's not if God is
If
alive.
God exists. If God exists, what would you like him or her to say to you when you pass away?
Assuming you go to heaven.
Yeah.
Well, we're hoping that that's the case. That's
The bar's over here.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was awesome. When you and I first talked about doing this podcast, we had mentioned that we really wanted to do an interview with the mayor. And we also talked about different people that are in the community that are unique to our town. But we also talked about promoting small business. And I think this is the first one where we can really say, yeah, we tried to do what we could to push people to shop local and buy from Uxbridge merchants. And I also think this episode is sort of neat in the sense that this was a little mix of How's It Made and Dragon's Den. What do you think?
Do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic when we went over and they had set up a little rolly thing for the beer to come down, and they had a whole way that it was contactless transfer of the beer? They have been so accommodating and resourceful in how they've navigated everything and still making such great products and still such great people. And of course, dogs. That makes me very happy. Dogs.
Now I'm a little riveted because now I'm trying to figure out what I know what you're talking about, the rolly thing. But there's got to be a better term for it than the rolly thing. Like, it's not a conveyor belt. I know that. But I remember going over there just to watch the whole procedure. Like, that was the big thing. We're going to order beer online. We're going to go to the second wedge and we're going to watch Rob roll it down the rolly thing. And now we're going to have to Google, what is the rolly thing called?
Rob, help us out. You got to give us the technical term for the rolly thing.
Yeah, but I remember talking to him too and saying, this is so revolutionary. This is so cool. And he said, well, don't tell the beer store you think that. Because the beer store does it. That's
the rolly thing.
Yeah, the rolly thing. So
Rob and Joanne, thank you so much. We're so glad that you guys have managed to successfully not only navigate through the pandemic, but are continuing to build your business. And we look forward to the growth that you're talking about with an expansion of the business and just more fun times and more great community spirit. And thank you for everything you bring to our community. And we are so excited about going over for beer and for the Foundry Pizza too.
Absolutely. We're also thankful for all the listeners that are giving us just great feedback. We have a Facebook group. It's a small group, but please contact us, message us. If there's somebody that you'd like us to interview, by all means, we have some ideas as far as who we're going to be presenting. But if you've got any others, like, we're all totally open to suggestions and we're totally open to communication.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production. Got an idea for an audio project and need help? Let's grab a second wedge beer and talk about it.